big thing that, that I ask on interviews is, just like pieces of advice that people who are now, well known would give to homebrewers. But, one thing that I really liked when I interviewed John Palmer about a year ago, actually, and he's actually back in New York this week, so it's cool.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but he said, he gave me like a list of, like 5 things that homebrewers should focus on in order to get their process down and brew good beer. So like, what are some things that from your from your experience, especially from doing these experiments for a while now, like what are some things you feel that people should focus on to to brew their best beer?
Oh, I think I'm so bad at this kind of stuff. I personally, uh, uh, the I think the most important thing is to not commit yourself to tradition. I think tradition, I don't think it's, I think everybody who came before us deserves respect. Man, all of the people from the folks who were making beer 200 years ago, they deserve our respect. They deserve everything that we give them. But I think, as with so many things in today's modern society, we have the ability to do things differently that not only could potentially mitigate problems from the past, but maybe we can make better beer doing it that way. So that's number one is think about things from your perspective, not from the perspective of somebody who was making beer 200 years ago. Besides that, number two, I guess, would be watch your water, because so far in all of the experiments that we've done, water seems to have the most significant impact on the quality of the beer that we make. And some people are so intimidated by water. Honestly, buy some gypsum, buy some calcium chloride, maybe pick up a sack of bath salts, Epsom salts, and start manipulating your water a little bit. I'm personally a fan of the Brew and Water spreadsheet that Martin Brungard put together. I think it's amazing. But pay attention to water. Fermentation temperature would be number three. Ferment cool. I'm a big fan of that. I'm not sure it matters that much, but ferment cool, it seems to have made a difference. Make healthy yeast starters, or at least pitch an adequate amount of yeast. Despite the results of the last of one of the recent experiments that we posted that showed that a single vial seems to produce the same results as a yeast starter, I just think it's good insurance.
Right.
And number five would be just be cool, man. Hang out with other homebrewers, reach out, ask for advice. Don't get butthurt if somebody says your beer tastes like Badussi. Be cool and have a good time. That's what this whole hobby is about. When people take it too serious, I think it starts to lose its flair. And the reality is, this is a fun hobby, and let's have a good time. And ask for advice and accept the advice that you get. Yeah, I think that's five.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. I mean, it took me a while also to take the plunge and buy all like the salts and start tweaking my water.
Yeah.
What actually really got me to first start tweaking my water is last year when John Palmer first made his first trip to New York in a while. He brewed a double IPA at my local homebrew shop,
Uh-huh.
and he obviously wasn't there when I first tried it. But when I tried it, like I think the main hop they used was Citra, and just from the water tweaking they did, it was like tasted like the juiciest peaches and apricots you've ever tasted in your whole life, just from tweaking the water a little bit here and there for to accentuate those flavors.
Totally. Yeah, it's amazing what water quality can do. And what's the part that gets me about when it comes to water is you've got guys like Colin Kaminsky and John Palmer who wrote the new water book,
Right.
who are I so appreciate their humility, because they're talking about how it's the last thing I'd do if I were. in my experience, it's made the biggest impact on the quality of my beer, and not only that, but it's the only significant variable that we found in our experiments. And I just think people need to take it a little bit more seriously. If you really want to bump your game, if you really want to make better beer and start winning awards and start moving, the beer that you make forward, start messing with your water. And it's easy. It's not as intimidating as it sounds.
Right. I mean, sometimes it's as easy as spending a little extra money on a good pH meter just to make sure you're not adding too much.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the beer that really made it for me my own homebrew beers, I brewed a double IPA and tweaked the water, and like it was supposed to be 130 IBUs, but you could hardly taste it,
Right.
because the pH was just right with adding gypsum, So you never know. But just to get a little more personal, I have a big focus of the brewed palate is in the local New York City homebrewing scene. I'm wearing a new club's T-shirt that I helped start called the Brewminaries. So what's your local homebrew scene, out in your area?
Yeah, by the way, I love that shirt. I've been kind of fixating on it this whole time. I think it's genius design. We've got a great homebrew scene here in Fresno. I think it's growing. I think there's a lot of room for it to grow, but the Central Valley of California isn't necessarily known for being the most hip place or the most modern, the most modern beer scene, but we've got a couple local clubs. The probably the biggest one is the San Joaquin Warthogs, and it's a group of really good guys who've gotten together to make some fantastic, I think, progress in growing the homebrew scene. There's a relatively new club that I'm affiliated with called BT6, and it's more focused on competitions and making beer just to really get into the competition side of things, and that's been a lot of fun. We've got a whole bunch of new local breweries opening up. It seems like I'm sure it's growing just as fast everywhere else, but sometimes a new brewery will open up and I didn't even hear about it. And we live in a pretty small town. So, local homebrew shop, Ben Como's, is really great and always willing to order what we're looking for if they don't have it in stock. And it's been really cool to kind of watch this scene kind of expand as I've been a part of it over the last 7 or 8 years here in the Central Valley of California. So it's good. I can't really say much negative about it. I think a lot of people are really opening their horizons to different qualities, styles of beer, and have a good time making beer themselves. So.
All right. I mean, I've definitely over the past couple of years, like I found the more I got involved with my local homebrewing community, the better my beers have become as a result by having more people to talk to. And also it just actually increases your appreciation, for the hobby in itself. It's not just something you do at home. It's something that you can, share with other people. You make a lot of good friends out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, cheesy as it sounds, I often say that I'm in this hobby way more for the community than I am for the beer. I love the people who homebrew, and that's so true with where I live now. So many of the local homebrewers that I meet up with or that I talk with are just so passionate about making better beer, and that passion to me is so inspiring. It's so fun to be a part of that, and the beer might taste like shit, but whatever, who cares? We're learning from each other. We're having a good time growing this hobby. I personally believe that this hobby is what's behind the growth in the craft beer market altogether, and to be able to kind of bounce stuff off of each other and to know that that's contributing to the growth of something that we all love so much. I don't know. It's fun for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, throughout our discussion, you've dropped some names of some, other well-known, beer homebrew bloggers, like PhD in beer, which I also follow in his hop series as well.
Oh, such a smart guy.
What are your impressions of, the beer blog, the homebrew blogging scene And nowadays, there's so many of them out there. I've been trying to compile a directory on my blog. How do you feel like they're really contributing, like sites like ours, that are contributing to the growth of homebrewing?
I mean, I guess I'm biased, but I have this conviction where I think it's folks like, Mike Tonsmeyer just wrote the go-to book on sour beer, and he was a homebrew blogger. Denny Kahn, one of my homebrew heroes, if it weren't for his website, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. That's what inspired me to go all grain. He was a small guy. Now he's got one of the best books on the market, Experimental Homebrewing. I love it. But I think that we have this ability, as people who run these websites that people enjoy reading and stuff, to have an impact. And I think at the same time as viewing that as kind of an exciting thing, we need to look at that with an element of caution, because what we say can get taken the wrong way. And I've never I've never realized that more than over the last 3 or 4 months. But I think blogs, websites, they're the new book. And that's what people are going to get their information nowadays. And so we kind of have a weight on our shoulders, I think, as people who are into the homebrew blogging world, and
You could look at that two ways, because like on the one hand, it gives us, like you said, a sense of responsibility to
right.
present as much information or present as much of the ups and downs of home brewing as possible in order to help educate people. But on the other hand, it also helps us increase our own passion, because it inspires us to try more and more things so that we can have those experiences to share with other people, in general.
I'm telling you, the humility that I've experienced, the how wrong I've been about my own, approaches to this hobby. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more.
Some people might start a blog when to chronicle their adventures, from the beginning when they first started. But both of us, came to blogging where we'd already been homebrewing for a few years, and then put our own spin on it and decided to make a blog out of it. So how did you get to the point where you were ready to really share your experiences with other people?
Oh, okay. I've never, a little backstory here. I started one blog 6 years ago when my wife and I were pregnant with our first kid, her name is Hazel Ray, and she'll turn 6 on May 8th. I have to throw that out there. And she just lost her first tooth, and it's hella cute. And the blog, I started this blog, and it was my way of kind of like telling my parents how I wasn't going to parent my daughter the same way they parented me. And I wasn't even, I had no animosity. It was just like, this is a subtle way of doing that. Well, when my wife pointed out to me that's all I was doing, I killed the blog, and I moved along. So I've never been interested in that kind of thing. But one thing I've always done is, since I was about 13 years old, is I've been into songwriting, and I play the guitar and I write these cheesy songs and whatnot. And I had a buddy one time come to me and say, well, how, I really like the songs that you're writing. How can you not share them with other people? And I said, I just don't care. I don't really, why, I don't know why I would share that with other people. It would seem arrogant. It would whatever. And he says, well, I think that's arrogant of you to think that. And I thought, oh shit. Well, okay. And so, as I started doing these homebrew experiments on my own, I got a good friend. His name's Chris Padalinsky, I introduced to brewing, and we started brewing together a whole bunch, and we were doing these little experiments together and whatnot. And I would kind of like, I'd go to Homebrew Talk, or I would go to Reddit or whatnot. And I would share the results of my little experiments. They weren't very formal. And people really seemed to enjoy that. And I remembered, I thought back to this friend of mine who was saying, how can you not share that? How can you not share that? And I thought, okay, whatever. I've got time to write this stuff up. Maybe I'll start a blog. And that's what I did. And from the first month, it seemed like there was just this hunger for people for that kind of stuff, for that kind of information. And there's a part of me that feels like I just got lucky that I kind of hit it at the right time. You know, I caught the wave right when it was about to break, and I'm kind of riding that. And I'll be honest, the success of Brulosophy has been something that's shocked the hell out of me. I mean, I've always considered myself kind of a dweeb, and the fact that I'm that this website is read by as many people as it is on a daily basis kind of shocks me. Thank you, I guess. I really don't know why, but that's how it started. Yeah, it was that's what it was. Yeah.
One last specific question I had for you. You know, a lot of times when I look at all the stuff you're brewing, I'm like, I keep asking, like, I wish I had the capacity to brew that often and that, you know, do all this cool stuff. But like, you know, now that you really put a focus on these experiments, you know, do you miss brewing just specifically to create certain flavor, like, you know, flavor profiles for yourself? Like, you know, like you know, I love Pivo pills. So when I decided to brew my first lager, I decided to take my spin and, you know, come up with a recipe, you know, and get the hops and create that flavor profile so I could have it on tap at home, you know. So, you know, how do you balance, you know, that kind of thing for yourself?
Oh, man. Well, I've got a couple of friends who have really nailed me to the wall. You know, why aren't you just making the beers that you know you make well? But the truth is, everybody has a reason for doing what they do. And as much as I love really good beer, I like experimentation better. And that's I would say that my hobby isn't home brewing, it's home brewing experimentation. And so I don't know how else to put it. I love that piece of it. I love testing shit out. I love, you know, taking these ideas and putting them to the test. And so, you know, there's a part of me that kind of misses just brewing for fun and trying to make the best beer that I can, you know. But if I were only doing that, I would really miss the experimental side of it as well. I woke up this morning at 5:30 and I made, for the first time in 9 months, a non-experiment batch of my Tiny Bottom Pale Ale, and it's for a party that my aunt's throwing in a couple of weeks. And you know, I was doing it, and the whole entire time I was just feeling bad that I wasn't doing an experiment. You know, that's it's kind of cheesy, and some people might think of it as kind of self-serving as well, but that's really what I just enjoy doing. And so I don't feel bad about it. I've been convinced to enjoy entering competitions, and the way I do that is what I'll usually do is I'll decide on the beer that I want to enter. I'll design the recipe, or I'll take an old recipe that I know is well designed, and I'll brew that, but then I'll turn that into an experiment somehow. So I still get the beers that are good, you know,
Right.
But there's always the potential that half of it's a drain pour. So far, that hasn't been the case very often, but so it still works out. I still get to do, you know, the recipe design and making the good beer, but I also get an experiment out of it as well. So
I mean, I guess we'll end off just, you know, some stuff to plug, some stuff that you're going to be involved in. Oh, the Hop Chronicles, but you're going to be at NHC in San Diego, so you could just talk a little bit about, you know, just so people know on the, you know, because I mean, you can post it as a video on YouTube, so and on my blog. So just tell people like what you're doing at NHC, you know, and stuff like that.
Well, I will be at NHC. This will be my first NHC this year. I've been really lazy the last few years and I haven't gone, but I'm really excited about heading down to San Diego this year. I will be bringing at least one, probably two experiment beers. So anybody who's at NHC who wants to be a participant, maybe you think that you've got a better palate than my participants, or maybe you're just really interested like I am in experimentation. Come find me. I'll be posting stuff. Hopefully, if I remember, posting stuff on my Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Brulosopher. And hopefully my Twitter page. That's also Brulosopher. But yeah, we'll be hanging out there. I'll be on Basic Brewing Radio is going to be recording a show there. I'll be on one of the live shows there. Looking forward to that. And otherwise just hanging out, kind of perusing around. I won't, I'm not going to be too flashy or anything like that. So feel free, whoever wants to, feel free to hook up with me on Twitter or Facebook, and I'll tell you where I'm at. Come drink my beer.
And I, definitely advise people to just in general keep up with your blog. You post, pretty regularly. It's definitely, one of my favorite resources to go to nowadays.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Just don't take it too seriously, Barry.
Exactly. So I guess we'll, end the interview portion of our conversation here, and I'll wish you cheers.
Cheers.
And I guess I'll thank you for all your contributions to the homebrewing community. We look forward to seeing more from you in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show, and for everything that you do for the homebrewing community as well.